Itchy? Where? All over? It has to do with certain poisonous gases running out the flesh and skin, right under the surface. It also has to do with losing weight, because there's, less volume and there's shrinkage of the tissue, and when the tissue shrinks, it causes it. Does anything help? Yeah, hot bath. Hot bath. And you might put a little bit of a lemon in your bath water. Okay, shall we begin? Our subject this morning, I think this is my favorite lecture of all the ones that we do, and I'd like to ask for your participation during the course of the lecture. If there's anything you'd like to share with us or anything that you can add to my observations. What we're going to talk about is food a substitute for love? There are many aspects to this subject. Now, I often wonder, I think when you come to Shangri-La, most of you, however, not all of you, of course, come to lose weight. Some of you are here for various physiological problems, different impairments within the system, and hopefully we can help you through those things. But I think it's important that you stop and consider, at least while you're here, what brought you, how did you get into this position that you're in physically, so that you need to come somewhere, as I sort of jokingly call it, voluntarily commit yourself to a place where they're going to help you get off those excesses of pounds. But in most cases I find that there is some kind of a psychological problem in which people turn to food when they are frustrated, when they're worried, when they're feeling lonesome, when they hate themselves, when they feel guilt, one reason or another. It seems that food is the most readily available placator. However, what it causes in the round of the circuit of the eating, the somewhat questionable pleasure that it brings, and then the guilt experience afterwards, and then the feeling of the horror of watching the pounds go up, up, up consistently without fail. And then one day, all of a sudden, you are at a stage where you must do something. Hopefully, as we know, we see some people who don't do anything at all. So at least you are there where you are willing to do something about it here and now. I think there are a number of reasons why people turn to food emotionally to secure some kind of a relief. There are many interesting theories. Some of them I've devised watching y'all over the number of months that I've been here working at the Shangri-La as health director, and some that I had studied beforehand and never actually related necessarily to obesity. I'd like to go through this list of them, and if there's anything you can add to it while I'm speaking, please feel free to do that. And then afterwards, I'd like us all to kind of open up and bare our hearts, and I think it's really good group therapy if we can express to each other under what circumstances. Those of you who would like to participate, I won't go around and point to each of you individually. I don't think we need to do that. But anybody who'd like to share their experiences, I think we could, if you open up and release it somehow, it doesn't make it all so mysterious to you. And then somehow you see it in a different light of day. And then perhaps we can throw some recognition on the problem. I think one of the reasons that people will begin to overeat voraciously is because they know that it's going to make them fat. And being fat is not necessarily a pleasant experience in this culture. Let me say that it's quite a cultural situation. In other cultures, women of what do we call it? Hefty, buxom, hefty, good proportions, bulk, are thought to be actually very, very lovely. I know, I lived in Mexico for 6 years with the Mestizo Indians. There's nothing they love better than a good, heavy woman. They have a little saying in Spanish that says, "Es una mujer de 3 metros." And she's a woman of 3 yards. It means it takes 3 yards to make her a skirt. And I think that to them is a real compliment. Now that means that not only is it a compliment to the woman, but it's a compliment to the woman's husband or her father. that he has it together enough to provide a lot of food for her to eat, more than she needs to maintain her life, but allow it to go beyond in an excess. That means that that's the representation, the symbol of his standard of living, more or less, his ability to provide for his family. They used to get a hold of me and they'd squeeze and pinch my arms and they'd say, nothing, no fat at all, no fat at all. Don Allen doesn't feed you well enough. Come with me and I'll get you fat in a couple of months. And one thing, you know, they always felt sorry for me, knowing, of course, that I didn't eat meat or even at that time, didn't eat any cooked food at all. And they just thought that was just outrageous, and it wasn't I who decided to do that consciously, but it must be my husband who forced me to do it. So every time he wasn't around, they'd say, you don't have to do that now. Ellen's not around. You can have whatever you want. I'll give you this or give you that. Come home with me. And of course, I felt really fine, and I'm glad to be thin. But the point was that it really is a cultural thing. In this country, it's a beauty and youth-worshipping culture. And we find that we have to, sadly hang on to those two things. And if we don't have them, we feel totally out of it. I think it's a real reflection of the unconscious cruelty that goes on around us. That we make people feel that the culture makes people feel that they are unacceptable in many ways. I think we go through that all during childhood, having experiences of being felt unacceptable. And then when you reach an age where you should be somewhat getting over those problems, you're thrown back into the throes of the lion's den again with physiological problems of being overweight. Okay, I think one of the reasons is that it's a real desire to hide. Okay? Now, you know that when you overeat and you do it chronically and you're wishing you could stop, but you're going ahead doing it anyway, in the back of your mind is the knowledge that it's going to make you overweight and you're going to have to hide. The day will come when nothing in your closet fits you anymore. When you get a call to go out for dinner and you don't want to go. You don't want your friends to see how overweight you've become over the past month. Or you want to keep away from your husband. Or for one reason or another, you don't want your children to see you anymore. So you will unconsciously use the food as a means of getting yourself away from the people in your life that you feel you love to be with. However, subconsciously you wish that you weren't with them. Or you just want to hide for one reason or another. Personal feelings within yourself. You want to tuck yourself away somewhere and keep out of contact with the rest of the world. And no better way to do that than to overeat and get yourself overweight. That's another thing people do when they come here. A lot of you don't even admit to your families where you've gone. Many people come and say, well, my family or my husband doesn't know where I am, thinks I'm in Europe somewhere, one thing and another, and they're here trying to get off those extra pounds. But in reality, they have come to hide. And now it's the culmination of months of hard work, of getting themselves fat. And now finally it's over. They've reached the stage and they have to admit it. So that's one reason. I think I notice in particular with young women and unhappily married women, it's the means of punishing either the father, the mother, or the husband. It's unpleasant to everyone around you, the experience of gradually becoming overweight or eventually being obese one day. And again, most of this is unconscious, but nevertheless, it definitely is there. Particularly, as I say, with young girls, it's a real good leverage to make the mother or the father suffer through one way or another. It may be to make your husband suffer, that you're wishing you could get at him in one way. And that's a very good way to do it, to make your physical appearance unpleasant to him or her, whichever way. Now, there's a psychiatrist who is no longer alive. He died in 1956. His name is Wilhelm Reich. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work, but he's a very famous Viennese psychiatrist. Now, he did some very, very interesting studies, and this is what I studied long before I came to Shangri-La, and I was amazed to see the consistent application from day to day of his theories. He had a couple of things. He felt that if you came to my relaxation class, I talked to you a little bit about tension, how it sits internally in the musculature of the body. That tension, the definition of it is an internalization of negative experience. And one of the largest areas of this internalization of negative experience that actually sits in the muscles, it makes your muscles tight and knotted up. One of the largest places for that accumulation of tension is in the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is right over and in union, in conjunction with the stomach wall. Now, when you overeat, what you do is fill up the stomach so much that it pushes out up against these tightened, chronically tense muscles of the diaphragm. And that gives you a relief. You no longer feel that knotting. You know that knotting sensation in the stomach that makes you want something to eat? You have to feel that up. It's because the muscles in the diaphragm right across the top under the surface of your skin are doing this. Instead of being like this, okay, they should more or less be like this. They've gotten like that from tension of one kind or another. Now, each of you knows individually what makes you nervous, what makes you tense, what makes you feel upset. Whatever it is, be it anxiety, grief, worry, fear, anything over financial, personal matters, worrying about your kids, worrying about yourself, one thing and another, it actually makes your muscles tense, and then they start closing in on one another. They tighten up and knot. Now, when you fill up your tummy, it pushes it out up against these tightened muscles, and that causes a physiological relief from the psychosomatic problem of the tensing of the muscles. So when you push your tummy out, you feel a little bit better. The tension is somehow relieved. Don't you feel that? That even though you know you shouldn't be eating, when you do have something to eat, somehow you calm down. Yes, most definitely so. And that's why. You calm down because you push the stomach up against the muscles of the diaphragm. And the muscles in the diaphragm actually are the seat of anxiety and fear. When you're feeling anxious or afraid of one thing or another, it's that causes the tensing of the muscles, and again, the pushing out of the stomach up against those muscles causes a relief. The other thing that Reich felt was that the mouth, the chewing sensation. Now, he observed that the mouth is directly related to the same embryonic tissue as the genital organs. And by that we mean when the embryo is in the womb and it's just developing, it's a little thing that looks like that, kind of a C-shaped curve. Here at one end is the mouth that will gradually develop into the mouth, and the other end is the anus and the genital region. Now, it's the same little tissue. It's the same. There's only, in the beginning in the embryo, there's only one flow of energy, a current of electricity that runs through it. And as that baby grows, that gradually develops into the digestive tract. But even as it grows, it still remains the same embryonic tissue, and it has the same sensation of energy pulsing from one end to the other. Now, he felt, and I quite agree, even particularly with myself, that excessive chewing either stimulates or placates nervous sexual energy. Okay? So we know that sometimes you've gone beyond the state of hunger, but you enjoy the chewing sensation so much. Now, it may be, as I say, either to stimulate or placate sexual energy. One or the other would work. Now, if there is sexual frustration, chewing comes in to be much more of a need, an actual instinctual need that you have to replace the sexual pleasure. Now, if there's an excess of sexual energy, the chewing also becomes, again, quite a necessary need. I think that's just interesting to know. I often also think that you might consider, if you have noticed that when a sexual experience or relationship is ungratifying or unsatisfying, one of the first things you want to do is jump up and get something to eat. Have you noticed that? And if not, if it is satisfying, then you're very content to rest, which is what you normally and biologically should do afterwards. So it's just interesting anyway to know. Also, I feel, I don't mind, being very personal about it and saying with myself that it's a pregnancy substitute. From time to time, from day to day, I overeat. I'm a chronic overeater myself. You may not know it to look at me. It's true. I'm quite, of normal weight, and I don't have any excesses of fat on me. But if I hadn't been showed this path many years ago, I'm sure I would be very fat now. I'm sure I would be if I were overeating on meat, potatoes, bread, dairy products, and processed foods. But I overeat on watermelon, tomatoes, sesame seeds, and raw vegetables. And all it does is overtax my digestive organs, and I have to sleep more to make up for it. And that's the only effect that I notice. But it does not ever make me fat, and it hasn't over the 3, 4, 6 years that I've been on this regime. But for the past 3 years, I've been living on about 95% raw foods. So as I say, I too am a chronic overeater, and I understand, I'm very compassionate with you who experience the same feeling. I do it myself. Occasionally, from time to time, I'll get into ice cream. And when I get started, I won't stop until I finish maybe 2 or 3 quarts. And I won't stop. Now, I've been good. I haven't got... That's my last Waterloo, my very last Waterloo. That's the last thing.
In the same day?
In the same hour. That's my last thing. Now, I've been good. I haven't had any for about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months. So, I'm coming around. But as I say, you can't expect yourself anyway to do everything all at once. That's the last thing that I have been unable over the years to give up. Of course, living as I did in a isolated environment, there wasn't any ice cream. But I found as soon as I came back to civilization, I thought, well, now I know it's been so many years living in the forest that I'm not going to have any of the problems because I've been away from them for so long, and none of that food will even interest me. And it's true, 99.99% of it doesn't interest me at all. But I was very surprised to see when I walked by the ice cream that my hand was just reaching in, totally against all of my intellectualism, but there went my hand reaching in, pulling out the ice cream. And before long, there I saw myself sitting there, gobbling up the ice cream. But I think I've conquered it, I really do. I just think it's just gone. And that's what will happen. You will eventually just keep continually trying, stay with consistent effort. And every time you see that you're eating something that's harmful, fattening, or one thing or another that's below your standard, just don't bug yourself about it. Don't worry. Don't get down on yourself, and don't feel guilty. Just continue and keep on trying, and it's all going to work out. Now, I think another reason that we tend to overeat generally is a lack of commitment or sufficient interest to something in life. It just in a sense, we're bored, and it may be that we're chronically bored over many, many years. And food, the intake of food, most definitely is an activity. It gives us something to do. One of the hardest things I feel on a fast is the boredom. All of a sudden you have 6 or 7 hours which you would normally be spending preparing the food, eating it, and cleaning up afterwards. A great deal of your physical activity during the day goes into the preparation and consumption of food. Isn't that true? And when you go on a fast, all of that time is removed. Now all of a sudden you have that much time freer. And so I think that one of the reasons that people tend to chronically overeat is generally a lack of commitment to something that interests them in life, or gives them a feeling of accomplishment in one direction or another. Now, is food a substitute for love? I most definitely think that it is. You must remember that when someone loves us, something is coming into us. They are giving us something of one kind or another. And that love, because it is what it is, because in its expression in all ways, because it's an expression of a real godlike sensation in us, something is coming in, we are being fulfilled, we are being filled up with this love. And when that is missing in our lives, we have to fill something up with something else. And we're putting into the body something. And I think it's that putting in that replaces the input of love. We feel very often that there's not enough coming in. Maybe there's too much going out. Maybe we have too many people to take care of. Maybe we love someone more than someone loves us. Or we have too much to do, one thing or another. There's too much going out and not enough coming in, for whatever the personal situation may be. So by taking in of food, by pushing into our body, we make up for that lack in our external lives. So I most definitely think that food is a substitute for love, and somehow it makes us feel better afterwards, even though the ultimate reaction is one of guilt and sometimes great aversion. Now, one of the hardest things to understand, also I feel, that there's a sense of compulsive self-destruction about us. Now, we know that the food is going to do us harm because it's going to make us fat. And nobody wants to be fat. You know you're not going to like that. You know you're going to get into problems. Your clothes aren't going to fit. You know when you walk out to visit friends, you're going to feel like you wish your body wasn't being seen. Wishing again that you could hide. Now, this, in a sense, is forcing yourself up against the wall, forcing yourself into a corner. And I think that one of the hardest things to deal with in this problem psychologically, why people overeat, is, again, that unconscious compulsive self-destruction, which I think is really rampant all around us. And we're not aware of it, but there it is. And you just wonder, why do I do these things? Well, you can pretty much take the burden off your shoulders because we live in a very self-destructive society as well. And we are only reflections of that society. So we have many things superimposed on our daily lives that we just really have no control over unless you elect to remove yourself from the society, which is actually what I intend to do, which I have done. I've been back now from April to October. I think I prefer the forest. Nothing personal. I love you all, and I really had a wonderful time, and I'm glad that I came out, but I prefer the woods. So I'm going back. Okay. Now, as children, remember that the food, the care of the kitchen was really symbolic of your mother's love, wasn't it? If your mother was there taking care of the kitchen, she took care of the household, and she fed your meals and made your chicken soup when you were ill. And when you were sick in bed, you lay there with your lovely covers and your little toys all around you, and Mommy brought you something to eat. And you felt secure, and everything was in order and in place, and life was going on in a secure manner. Now, remember too, Mommy always said, finish up, eat everything you have on your plate. You need your nourishment, one thing and another. And sometimes, if even as a mother, how do you feel when you prepare a meal and people sit down and gobble a mouthful or two and then leave it? You feel somehow that it's a personal slight on your work or your care and affection for them, that they haven't given enough expression or gratitude for your work. So we have it tied up too with motherly love as well. It's a way that Mommy and Daddy show that they love us by keeping us well fed. And we're generally overfed in between meals as well. So we have it, chronically, almost from birth. As far as I'm concerned, all babies that I see fed on a conventional method are overfed and malnourished. So we get it almost from the very moment that you're born. And I think if Mommy stuck a pacifier in your mouth, you are going to become a chronic overeater, because you learn to pacify one feeling or another with the movement of the jaw and the mouth and the lips. And there's no better way either than to talk or to eat. And if you're alone, the only thing you're going to be able to do is eat. And I think you'll notice also that you may tend to overeat more so when you're alone. Also, there's the problem of being sneaky about it. I have many people who come and say, it's true I overeat, but I will only overeat if I can sneak it. A grown woman, 35 years old, said that every time she gets into her mother's house, she always had the room upstairs when she was a child. And she said even now, to this day, when she gets to her mother's house for a visit, she'll sneak down the staircase at nighttime. And she remembers as a child, she had every single little step worked out. She'd step on this corner, on this step, and another one here, and this one in the middle, so she didn't make a single creak all the way down the staircase. And get into the kitchen and gobble up leftovers and turkey sandwiches and ice cream, one thing and another. And still, at 35, when she goes to her mother's house, she has this, behavior modification, this compulsive desire to sneak. And I think many of you, too, if you think about a lot of the times that you overeat, it's when you're alone or when you feel that nobody is watching you. And it's some kind of a strange sensation that you get from doing that. And, you know that you're hurting and cheating yourself, but somehow you have to sneak it. You have to be doing something wrong to get the sensation that you're looking for. Again, why? I just don't really understand 100%, but I do think, again, that it's compulsive self-punishment of one kind or another. And, it's a lot to think about. Of course, in this society, again, and in almost every society that I've ever been in, when people are together as a social scene, what is it? It's for drinking and eating. Let's get together for dinner. We'll talk about it over lunch. Let's meet for drinks. So we have it all tied up not only with love, concern, commitment, and interest, but we have it tied up also just with sociality or conviviality, all of these things. When you're dieting, how many invitations do you get for dinner? My God, dozens. Always at the worst time. And I think it may not be more so when you're dieting, but just that you're more aware of it because you're trying to eat less. And then that brings it sort of into focus, how much food activity is centered around social activity. Well, let's see. What do y'all think? Anybody like to share anything? Anybody going to open up and expose themselves?
Covered it all.
There's a lot of reasons, isn't it? A lot of reasons, but I think they all have some real basis. Yes. Okay. Pain. In what? Can you elaborate? Yeah. You say that was boredom.
No, what you did,
The pain. Did the overeating relieve the pain?
well, it made me feel it.
Made you feel better. One reason is, I'll tell you why, it's quite an interesting physiological reason, is that when you're experiencing, let's say, pain in the back of your back, okay? Now we know, since I hope you know that since you've been here, that pain is a message to you that there's a healing crisis going on, that your body is working on that area, trying to relieve the cause of discomfort. Now when you eat something, you take away the body energy from that healing experience, and the body energy goes into the digestive process. And that's why when you're in pain, if you eat something, you may be able to get some temporary, even slight relief, because you remove the body energy from the elimination area, and it goes into the stomach. It has to actually push blood to the stomach to be able to emit the digestive juices into the stomach. I think boredom, too, is a big one, isn't it? Boredom. And I think anything makes us overeat more than being on the rebound from a love affair. Does anybody agree? My God. Nothing does it more than that. We have so many broken hearts, unrequited lovers around here, you wouldn't believe it. Yes.
I've read many articles recently about fat cells. If you're heavy to the child, you develop more fat cells, you never can get rid of them, and you're always crying for food.
It's true. It's as though when you're a child, you build more storage houses. You have these storage vats available to you. And your body just gets into that momentum of keeping excesses of material on. And it's true. It just learns to do that. And it's like in a rut. It continues to look to build excesses. And it will actually give you a morbid, however, somewhat natural desire for excesses of food, because the body has been conditioned and trained to build excesses of material. So it's true, not that you can never get rid of them. You can get rid of them. But I would imagine that a fast or a hygienic diet would be the only way to do it.
What I read is typically will reduce in size, but they never eliminate them. They'll never go away unless they
Perhaps so. I'm not really sure if those fat cells ever go away or not. But I was a fat kid. I used to be called Butterball. Butterball and cow eyes. Yes. On a hygienic diet, at what rate can you expect the thinning process to come about? Well, my experience has been that people who have returned and have been on the hygienic diet, I know of a number of women who came and were greatly, really turned on and interested and got a good solid foundation and went home and lived hygienically for 9 months to a year, okay? I'm speaking now of 5 women that I remember. They lost about 70, 80 pounds over between 9 months and a year. Now, if it's 9 months, I know one woman lost 60 pounds in 9 months. Now, that's 9 times, that's 270 days. Now, if you spread 60 pounds over 270 days, it really isn't very much. It's quite imperceptible, but you must continue. And if you can get beyond the first 45 or 50 days, even 60 days, you will be so encouraged. But it's because sometimes that you're accustomed to losing rapidly. You think that fasting and hygiene are the same. It's really not so. You can take off 12 or 14 pounds in 7 days fasting, but it may take you, 40 days to take that off eating. But it is almost imperceptible from day to day, but it is most definite. If you will stay on the hygienic diet and you will eat basically 90 to 95% raw foods, 80% alkaline, and 80% fruits and vegetables, 20% proteins, you will take the weight off. 80% alkaline and 20% acid-forming foods, about 90% raw foods,